The Middle East has always been a geopolitical powder keg, a region where history, religion and politics collide in ways that shape the entire world. For centuries, this land has witnessed empires rise and fall, borders redrawn, and alliances forged and broken, all under the watchful eyes of the global community. But on June 12, 2025, the simmering conflict between Iran and Israel erupted into open war, sending shockwaves far beyond the region's borders. The world watched in disbelief as the fragile balance that had held for years was shattered in a matter of hours. This wasn't another proxy fight. This was a direct, high-stakes clash between two of the region's most powerful and determined militaries, each with much to lose and even more to prove. The scale and intensity of the confrontation marked a turning point, with both sides mobilizing unprecedented resources. The stakes are global: nuclear weapons, oil prices, and the risk of a wider war that could draw in superpowers and disrupt the world economy. Every decision made in the region now reverberates through financial markets, energy supplies and diplomatic circles worldwide. Years of painstaking international efforts to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions and maintain a fragile peace were shattered overnight, leaving diplomats scrambling for answers. The sudden escalation exposed the limits of diplomacy and the fragility of international agreements. Suddenly, the threat of nuclear proliferation became an immediate crisis, with fears of a nuclear exchange no longer just theoretical. The world's worst nightmares seemed closer than ever, as leaders weighed their next moves with the gravest caution. The fighting threatens to destabilize the entire region, risking a chain reaction that could drag in global powers and ignite new conflicts. The possibility of a broader war looms, with alliances being tested and old rivalries reignited. Israel's massive, coordinated strike was a strategic gamble, a message to the world that they were done waiting for diplomacy to work. The operation was meticulously planned, but its consequences remain unpredictable and potentially catastrophic. Now, the world faces the consequences, with every headline and every breaking news alert part of a story that could reshape the Middle East for generations to come. The uncertainty has gripped not just governments but ordinary people everywhere. This isn't just about military targets, it's about millions of lives upended, families displaced, and the global economy teetering on the edge. The human cost is staggering, as communities are torn apart and futures thrown into doubt. The events of June 2025 have opened a Pandora's box, unleashing uncertainty and fear, and the path back to peace looks longer and more complicated than ever before. The world is left searching for hope amid the chaos, as leaders struggle to find common ground. The future feels uncertain, and the world is on edge, watching and waiting as history unfolds in real time. Every moment brings new developments, and the stakes have never been higher. Understanding what's at stake is more urgent than ever, as the choices made now will echo for decades to come. The world holds its breath, hoping for wisdom and restraint in the face of unprecedented danger. On June 12, 2025, the world watched in shock as Israel launched unprecedented airstrikes deep inside Iran, shattering a tense calm that had held for months. The night sky over the Middle East was lit up by the roar of jet engines and the flash of explosions as the world's attention turned to a crisis unfolding in real time. The strikes targeted the Natanz nuclear facility and other key sites, hitting the very heart of Iran's nuclear ambitions. Precision-guided munitions rained down on critical infrastructure, sending shockwaves through Iran's military and scientific communities. This was no warning shot, it was a full-scale operation, crippling Iran's nuclear program, destroying infrastructure, and killing senior commanders and scientists in a matter of hours. The devastation was immediate and overwhelming, leaving emergency teams scrambling amid the ruins. The attack came just days before new diplomatic talks were set to begin, effectively destroying any hope for negotiations and leaving diplomats stunned and powerless. Hopes for a peaceful resolution evaporated overnight, replaced by a sense of betrayal and disbelief among international mediators. Israel's message was unmistakable: diplomacy had failed, and military action was now on the table for all to see. The world's leaders scrambled to respond, but the message was clear: Israel would act alone if necessary. The strikes triggered chaos in Iranian cities, sirens blared, blackouts swept through neighborhoods, and fear gripped the population as uncertainty spread. Streets emptied as families rushed for shelter, unsure of what the next hour would bring. For Iranians, it was a night of terror and confusion. For the world, a signal that the rules of engagement had changed overnight. Newsrooms across the globe scrambled to keep up with the rapidly evolving situation as analysts debated what might come next. The psychological blow was as significant as the physical damage, leaving families shattered and cities reeling from the sudden violence. The trauma of that night would linger, casting a long shadow over daily life and fueling a deep sense of vulnerability. Israel demonstrated its reach and resolve, fundamentally altering the conflict and sending a message to adversaries and allies alike. The balance of power in the region had shifted, and everyone was forced to reconsider their next move. The stage was set for a dangerous and unpredictable response, as Iran's leaders scrambled to react and the region braced for escalation. Military units mobilized and emergency meetings stretched late into the night as the world waited for Iran's next move. The world braced for what would come next, knowing that the consequences of this night would echo far beyond the Middle East. The events of June 12th would mark a turning point, the end of one era and the uncertain beginning of another. Iran's response was swift and overwhelming. Within 24 hours, Iran launched Operation Severe Punishment. Hundreds of missiles and drones targeted Israel. Israeli defenses intercepted many, but some broke through, causing casualties and damage. The skies over Israel were filled with sirens and explosions as millions sought shelter. Iran's attack proved Israeli territory was vulnerable, marking a point of no return. The conflict had escalated into a direct, state-on-state war. Each side now felt compelled to respond with even greater force. The world watched in horror as the crisis deepened. This war didn't come out of nowhere. Iran and Israel have been bitter enemies since the 1979 Iranian Revolution, fighting through proxies, cyber attacks, and assassinations. The core issue, Iran's nuclear program, which Israel sees as an existential threat. Iran's uranium enrichment pushed tensions to the brink, with diplomacy failing repeatedly. The final straw was the collapse of talks in June 2025. Israel believed Iran was using negotiations as cover for weapons development. Fearing time was running out, Israel struck first. The world fears an Iranian bomb could trigger a regional nuclear arms race and undermine decades of non-proliferation efforts. This isn't just about two countries, it's about global security. The world's reaction was immediate and deeply divided. The UN Security Council met in emergency session, but achieved nothing but angry speeches. The US, under President Trump, tried to balance support for Israel with calls for restraint, pleasing no one. Russia and China backed Iran, condemning Israel's actions and signaling their support. The EU called for a ceasefire, but their pleas were ignored. Arab states, fearing both a nuclear Iran and regional war, issued cautious statements and hoped the conflict wouldn't spread. The international system looked paralyzed, unable to stop the escalation. The region's fear was palpable, and the world's divisions were stark. The crisis had become a global problem overnight. The next 48 hours are critical. The world waits, holding its breath to see if the cycle of retaliation continues, or if a fragile calm can be restored. Every hour brings new developments, and uncertainty hangs heavy in the air. Newsrooms buzz with speculation, and ordinary people everywhere are glued to their screens, searching for any sign of hope or resolution. The sense of anxiety is palpable, stretching from the highest offices of power to the streets of cities worldwide. The risk of a full-scale regional war is real, with proxies and new technologies like cyber attacks and drones in play. Military forces are on high alert, and the threat of escalation looms over every border and city. The possibility of a single miscalculation triggering a much larger conflict has never felt more immediate, as both sides test each other's resolve and capabilities. Oil prices are surging, threatening a global energy crisis if the Strait of Hormuz is disrupted. The world's economies are bracing for impact as energy markets react to every headline and tanker movement. Consumers feel the pinch at the pump, and governments scramble to secure supplies, knowing that a prolonged crisis could send shockwaves through industries and households alike. The attack on Iran's nuclear sites may push Tehran to race for a bomb, sparking the arms race everyone fears. The possibility of nuclear proliferation in the region is now more real than ever, raising the stakes for all involved. International watchdogs warn that the delicate balance of non-proliferation could unravel, making the world a far more dangerous place. Old alliances and power balances are shattering, making the world more unstable. Trust between nations is eroding, and the diplomatic landscape is shifting in unpredictable ways. Long-standing agreements are being questioned and new rivalries are emerging, complicating efforts to find common ground. Only diplomacy can prevent catastrophe, but hope for talks is fading fast. The window for dialogue is closing and the consequences of inaction grow more severe with each passing moment. The world watches as negotiators struggle to keep channels open, even as tempers flare and trust evaporates. The cost of failure would be immense: lives lost, economies ruined, and regional chaos. The human toll is already mounting, and the ripple effects could be felt worldwide. Families are torn apart, communities shattered, and the sense of security that once seemed certain is now a distant memory. Peace is not just an ideal, it's an urgent necessity. The world must act now to prevent further tragedy and to give hope a fighting chance. Every voice calling for restraint, every effort at dialogue, matters more than ever in this moment of crisis. The lesson is clear: when diplomacy fails, everyone pays the price. No one is immune to the fallout of conflict, and the scars can last for generations. The images of destruction and despair serve as a stark warning of what's at stake if peace slips further from reach. The world stands on the brink, hoping for a way back from the edge. The choices made now will shape the future for decades to come. In this pivotal moment, the responsibility to choose peace over conflict has never been more urgent or more profound.